I'm so glad you're here. This week I'd like to see if I can solve a very specific problem that I have. I don't like coats. I mean, I like the look of them. I like the purpose that they serve. I'm very thankful that I have a coat. The only problem is I don't like wearing a coat. The sleeves are never big enough to wear with a sweater underneath. The sleeves get all bunched up, and then when it's all bunched up, I feel like Randy from A Christmas Story. I got my arms down! Put your arms down when you get to school. My range of motion is limited, and then the sleeve cuffs get bunched up, and then they're just weirdly bunched up. I get overwhelmed. I get overwhelmed and overwarm, which is a great problem to have. It means the coat's doing its job, and I'm very lucky to be overwarm in a situation where it's very cold outside. However, because I get overwarm, getting warm and sweaty also makes me feel overwhelmed. Then I don't wear a coat, but it's also very cold outside. I do have a coat that I like very much, which is my Mary Poppins coat. I love the design, I love the silhouette, I love how it fits in general. However, the sleeves are still a problem. Honestly, it's mainly the sleeve problem that drives me nuts, because I wear a sweater almost every day in the winter time, because Midwest winters can get intense. Like right now, it's 13 degrees Fahrenheit today. And because I have all of these very specific problems with coats in general, I'd like to make my own coat. And this is what I've come up with. The hope is that wearing it will not be physically overwhelming, and that if I make it for myself, I will be more likely to wear it. And if I'm making it, and it's my ideal coat, it's not gonna have a zipper. It has a detachable hood, it has a collar that can be flipped up or down, it has a princess skirt-like bottom, and it has, what are they, bishop sleeves? Bell sleeves? Not bell sleeves. Bishop sleeves? Spacious sleeves that gather at the wrist. Now to make this, I have a 90-inch by 90-inch quilted bedspread that I found in the depths of my linen closet. It has some stains on it, which is why I think it's been tucked away. And because it's white, we can dye it basically whatever color we want. So I'm gonna go with green. Now I did start this process a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I don't remember. I drafted a pattern. I used a sheet as a test run to kind of test out the process. I didn't even finish putting together the test run before I figured out that it is not going to look the way I wanted to. The silhouette just was not going to be what I wanted. And I realized that I was still trying to adhere to the right way of making a coat by using a coat pattern and combining it with something else. But I don't think there's a right or wrong way to make something that is specifically for you. And then it hit me. I basically want to make a dress, but with a blanket. So that's what I'm gonna do. I have already laid out all the patterns to make sure that I would actually have enough to do what I'm planning, and thankfully I think it's gonna work. So we're just gonna go cut out the pieces and then dye them, and then we'll get down to the details. I often say I'm Frankensteining patterns together, but this coat truly is my Frankenstein's monster, because every piece of this is from a different pattern. To make the bodice overlap in the front, the duster pattern I'm using for the top has an extended edge to be folded over when making the buttonholes, following the directions to make the duster. Instead of folding it over, I'm just going to cut one side with the extension and one side without, and hopefully that'll be wide enough to overlap comfortably as the coat. I finished cutting the rest of the pieces out and prepared everything to be dyed. Put the pieces through a quick wash cycle per the dye's instructions, then boiled tons of water to pour into this bin with everything. Looking back, I probably should have placed the fabric in after mixing the dye bath together, but this required like 6 or more pots of water, and I feel like I wouldn't have known just how much water to boil if they hadn't been in there. But eventually I added the dish soap and dye to the mix and sat next to my fabric as it soaked in the dye for about 30 or 40 minutes, stirring it pretty regularly. Alright, all of the pieces are dyed, washed, and dried, and now I've pinned them onto the dress form to see how it's looking. I think there might be some issues with how to put it together, just based on the overlapping bodice pieces and how to attach the collar in a way that it lines up, and also with the collar attached, how to attach the hood so that it can be detached. Also, with the slight overlap of the skirt in line with the bodice, where to put the pockets. I also forgot to cut out cuffs for the sleeves, so they're gonna have to be elastic, or we're gonna have to improvise with something else. Honestly, there might be some excess I can trim off of the hood because it's massive, which I like, but I also don't know how it's gonna line up around the head because there's just so much. So lots to figure out, but not tonight, so I'll see you tomorrow. Okay. the coat's looking pretty good so far. I do want to add some embroidery to I think the sleeves, the front bodice, the collar, and maybe the hood? I don't know. Oh, and the pockets. To do that, I need to finish off some of the raw edges so that I know where I can stitch and where things will be seen. And then after that, we'll figure out some embroidery. To get started with the sewing, I found this thread in my stash, and it was just the perfect shade. I did dye some of the original bias tape from the blanket, but very quickly realized that it would not be enough. So I found a fabric in my stash that complemented the vibes I'm kind of going for and cut out strips about 1.25 inches wide. Ironing the bias tape strips took a while, but it was absolutely necessary. I covered the raw edges of the pockets first as a test run to see if I needed to put everything through the serger or not. The edges were frayed from going through the wash twice, not to mention their swim in the dye bath, so it was a little more difficult to wrangle than I liked, so through the serger they went. To gather the sleeves, I seam ripped the quilting to open the layers up and cut out about 1 inch of batting to thin it out. If I hadn't, it would have been way too difficult to gather and sew them together. By the end of the night, almost every piece had its turn going through the serger, and the next day I put the bodice together in the back so I could estimate about where the embroidery would start and stop on different pieces. And I'm glad I did, because it needed an adjustment. For some reason, it feels a little like it's not tight around the arms, because it's quite loose, but for some reason it feels like it's tight around the arms, which I don't enjoy. I think I'm gonna chop some off. The overlap actually works really well. See, I don't know why it feels tight, because it isn't. The feel is the most important part, so I think I'm gonna chop some off anyway. Okay, I chopped a little bit off. Let's see if it feels better. But I know if it feels tight without the sleeves on, then it probably would have felt way too tight with them on. Not to mention, the whole point of this is to be comfortably layered on top of a sweater. Oh yeah. Honestly, I think I could cut a little more off, but I don't feel like doing that whole process again, because I had to seam rip the stitches, cut it off, feed it back through the serger, then re-sew it together, and I don't feel like doing that again. But yeah, there's space when my arms are down, there's space when my arms are up. I think that's okay. I think it'd be easier to figure out the embroidery when everything is separate, so I think I'm gonna stop the construction here. Oh no, I can't. I have to finish the sleeves. I'm gonna put the sleeves, I'm gonna attach the sleeves to the cuffs, then I'm gonna stop construction. No, wait, should I do the collar? I'm gonna attach the sleeves to the cuffs, put bias tape on the collar, and then I'll stop construction to do embroidery. And so I finished the sleeve construction by gathering the thinned out edge with some string and sewed them to some makeshift cuffs I worked out by cutting excess fabric off of the hood, which was a little bit too big. Then I added bias tape to the edges of the cuffs as well as the collar. Okay, I've got the sleeves put together and I've got the collar covered with bias tape, and with the front panels and the back panels all attached, I think it's time for embroidery. The vision I've had in my head is having some leafy vines and flowers kind of working up and down the arm. I don't know how it would look coming up from the sleeves. I don't know, might still be fun to try and add some leafy things down here with some flowers, especially to match the fabric that I used for bias tape. I'm gonna have to be careful about where I begin the embroidery up here, because the seam is going to change where that begins and ends. So I think I'll just leave 1 inch of room at the top. And I don't know if I have the time or the patience to embroider the entire hem of the skirt. I already have to cover it in bias tape if I have enough. I don't know if I'll have enough. To do this, I'm gonna use some stick and stitch and draw the designs on my iPad so that I have consistency, or as consistent as I can be. All of my embroidery threads are thrifted, and I'd like to keep it all secondhand. So if I run out of a shade of green on one arm and I still have to do the other one, we're not gonna be picky about the colors being exact. We're just gonna have fun with it. So I'm gonna go draw that up and we'll get to stitching. For the embroidery, I drew several different viney designs out on my iPad and printed them onto the stick and stitch, though they were a little bigger than I planned. I stuck them onto the sleeves, the collar, and the bodice. At that point, I also thought I wanted to embroider the hood, so I finished the edges and also covered the inner seam with some bias tape. For some reason, this step made it feel so professional, and I really can't explain why, but it did. After that, I grabbed my rainbow of thrifted threads and plucked out a variety of greens, a warm pink, and a soft yellow. I didn't get 3 stitches into this process before figuring out that the stick and stitch was not going to work long term. It made it so hard to pull the needle through that I had to use pliers. Now, I was also being very careful to only stitch into the top layer of the fabric to keep the flip side clean, which probably didn't help. But when I removed the stick and stitch, it was so much easier, and eventually I didn't even use the embroidery hoop. Embroidering everything took several days, and looking at the sleeves especially, I think I could add more, but for the sake of time, I moved on to putting everything together. Some pieces needed to be hand sewn, like the hood, especially where it was gathered or pleated, because it was simply too thick to sew on the machine. The last piece that needed the most work was the skirt. I put the waistline through the serger and decided to just bias tape the hem. When I say this skirt hem pushed me to the brink, I mean it. The bias tape kept getting caught up under the presser foot on the top side, then the underside would slide to the side and not get stitched, or it stitched too far over to begin with. It was just a mess and I nearly gave up on it. But I decided an ugly hem is better than a frayed edge, so I carried on. Are we going to see the ugly hem? No. No, we are not. Just know she's ugly and she's proud.
Is that what he calls it?
And since the hem didn't do me in, the bodice and the skirt decided to finish the job because they did not line up. By a lot. After a good night's rest, I got right back to work figuring out how to put the bodice and the skirt together. Since the bodice was too long, I first tried adding some darts in the back, and it technically would have aligned with the waist, but when I tried it on, it fit, but it was too snug for my liking, so I took the darts out and focused on the skirt. Trimming some fabric off of the waist would lengthen it, so after 2 rounds of that process, I finally got it to the right length and put the pieces together. Earlier that day, I had decided to attach the hood to the collar as one big removable piece, which meant I needed a different collar to always be on the coat. So I sacrificed my pockets, cut them up, and pieced them together around the neckline. To close the coat, I initially wanted some button and loop closures, so I went on a treasure hunt through my button tin for the perfect little buttons. These gold ones called out the loudest, and luckily I found 4 of them. For some reason, I questioned the button and loop closures at the very last second, and in the end decided to just embroider some buttonholes instead of making loops. The very last piece in this polyester puzzle was the hood, which needed some ties, and while it was dramatic but functional, a description that totally doesn't apply to me at all, it did remind me a bit of those poor unfortunate oysters in Alice in Wonderland. But otherwise, I liked it. And with that final touch, it was complete. So it's time for the reveal.
Tried filming outside, and the second I stepped out, a big gust of wind came through, and it was just a whiteout blizzard as all of the wind pushed the loose snow. I just got blasted by snow. And then it was deeper than I thought it was going to be. My It was like this deep. My boot almost just disappeared. Oh, and then I couldn't feel my fingers. I can't feel my fingers. So I came back inside. I can't spin.
There's a car coming. Give me just a second.
You cozy? Are you warm now? Yeah?
I like it. It's not what I planned, but I do like how it turned out. Also, if you hear a hum in the background, I have a space heater going that I'm not turning off because it's in the single digits and it's so cold. We'll start with the good things. The good things are it's very warm. I was only slightly worried about that because it is a thinner comforter and I wasn't sure how much warmth it would actually provide because there isn't like a lot of insulation to it, I guess. But it is quite warm, so that's good. Another good thing is it is pretty. I think the color is nice. Number 3, the shape of it all, the fit, is actually way better than I thought it would be. I don't know why I thought it wouldn't, because it was just making a dress basically with a blanket. I think I just got stuck in the thought process of this isn't the proper way to make a coat. There was really no way it wouldn't have worked. The fit is nice. It's what I wanted. And now for the things I could have done better, I think. Number 1, the color isn't exactly what I wanted. I wish I had gotten 2 green bottles and 1 yellow bottle of dye, because I think that would have given me a more concentrated green color, and with the addition of the yellow in there, not the whole bottle but maybe part of it, it would have given me a warmer toned green, which was what I wanted initially. This mint green was not the plan, although it does look nice, so I'm gonna move past the color. One thing I didn't take into consideration when Frankensteining the patterns together was the dropped shoulder on the top pattern that I used. I should have altered it a little bit more because I didn't consider the gathered or pleated shoulder on the sleeve being on a dropped shoulder for this. And with this fabric being so structured, it kind of looks a little funny with the dropped shoulder, but I clearly didn't think it was strange enough to fix it. So I just rolled with it. And I think it's fine. What was another drawback? Oh, the hem. The hem is... the bias tape simply refused to stay where I put it. So the hem is atrocious, but that's all I'm gonna say. The detachable hood and collar combo, which was actually my mom's idea. I had mentioned I didn't know how I was going to make the hood detachable, and talking about it, we both weren't kind of sure about the collar being on the coat. So she recommended, hey, why don't you just put the hood on the collar? And I was like, yeah, then the detachable part can just be the tie that goes in the front, and it worked out perfectly. It is adorable, even if it is slightly reminiscent of a baby bonnet, and it does its job blocking out the snow, so that's all I can ask for. Now, there was an unexpected drawback. Whenever I take the coat off, I apparently get supercharged with static electricity because I have super shocked myself twice now. I can still feel a tingle in this finger from when I turned the lights off. I could see the blue shock of electricity. It was wild. So that's something. I don't know if lining the coat would have made a difference either, because the fabric I would have lined it with also tends to be super shocky. So that's just something I'm gonna have to try and remember, is to just not touch any light switches after I take my coat off. I forgot a positive. The roomier sleeves were fantastic. I wore this underneath to see if it was comfortable to wear a sweater underneath it or not, and it was. So the roomy sleeves definitely made a huge difference with how long I wanted to keep my coat on, because normally I have not been wearing a coat when I take Pearl outside, and that's a problem because it's been in the negatives. I do like how it came out, and if you do too, you can let me know by hitting the like button. And if you want to see what we're doing next and join the channel, hit the subscribe button. And if you want to know when I post, hit the notification bell. YouTube will let you know. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!
I hate to say this, but I have to lean forward to turn the camera off. No? Okay.
Maybe I can get it with my foot, like this. Oh!